There's Mary and Tricia. We have Erica. Is Monique on the call? Okay, great. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started then. So welcome everyone to our March 2015 Health eWorkforce Consortium Student Support Staff meeting. And before we get started with our presentation, I just want to welcome a new navigator, Monique Shelton at NOVA. And Monique, if you're on, would you like to introduce yourself and say anything to the group? Okay, maybe she doesn't have audio. Okay, I'm also thrilled to have Michael Reese from Bellevue College here to speak with us all about tips for connecting with employers. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, I'll just say a quick word of introduction here. So I'm the Associate Director for Experiential Learning here at Bellevue College. And inevitably, people go, what does that mean, Associate Director of Experiential Learning? And I tell folks that I picked that title so that no one would really know what I do at the college. It's all part of my sinister master plan. But that's not actually true. What I do here at Bellevue is I provide leadership to a lot of the outside the classroom programs that give students an opportunity to apply the things that they're learning in the classroom. So internships are the largest of those. Work study is also run out of this office. We do a lot with undergraduate research these days, and we're doing more with academic service learning as well. So really, I get all the cool programs, the out-of-the-classroom programs at the college here, so it's kind of fun. So.
Great, thanks. Well, I'm so glad you're willing to share some of your wisdom with us. I'm going to turn the
and you asked me to share it, so caveat emptor, as they say.
I'm going to turn the controls over to you now.
That's a dangerous thing to do, Pam. All right, I think I figured out how to share my screen and make all this stuff go. So, whoa, I'm now the presenter. All right, so let me do that, and then let me bring up my PowerPoint. So, let me show that.
Okay.
So, I want to talk a little bit about ways to approach employer engagement. And, you know, one of the main takeaways that I have here is that there's no secret sauce per se. This is going to vary from institution to institution and from area to area. So these are really just a couple of ways and things that I've discovered that might be effective. And I've been an internship coordinator now for something close to a decade. So some of these are tried and true, but they're not going to work in every single area and in every single kind of thing. So the title of my talk today is Some Random Thoughts on Employer Engagement. And they're maybe in no particular order. Okay, they're not actually in no particular order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about different ways of approaching this question of employer engagement. I'm going to start with what I call grand strategy, sort of how to act instead of reacting, and a lot of that has to do with picking who your employer partners are going to be. And then I'll talk a little bit about how you can forge some partnerships and how do you sustain them once they're going. And then the sort of tactical business of, okay, now you've got a pretty good relationship with somebody. How do you go about the business of putting them in internships? And sort of my thinking here is that the navigators are by nature generalists. So you guys are going to know your student population really well, and you're going to have to do some employer outreach on there. So I'm sort of focusing more on the how do you deal with the employer outreach and employer engagement piece of the puzzle rather than on the getting students ready piece of the puzzle. I'll touch on that really briefly, but my sense is that you guys wanted to hear a little bit more about the how do you manage those employer relationships side of it. Is that right?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay. So these days at Bellevue College, the job market is definitely recovering, and in fact, I have the enviable problem of almost having more employers reaching out to us than we can really effectively meet their needs. We're really seeing here, in general, not for every program and not for every major, but we're seeing the labor market start to switch from a buyer's market to a seller's market, where our graduates are doing pretty well on the job market, and employers call all the time and say, how can we connect with your students, how can we do these kinds of things. And certainly I know that the recovery of the labor market is not happening equally quickly in all corners of the country, but that number of employer partners is making us be pretty strategic about what can we really do, because we can't be all things to all people. And I also realize this is going to be really different for other colleges that are maybe located in smaller cities and things like that. But so one of the things, and also whenever you're building a new program, this process of figuring out how are you going to build those connections. We've got a pretty thriving internship program. We're located inside a career center, which serves a lot of functions for us. Being connected to your career services people can be very, very useful. So our internship office is located inside the Center for Career Connections. That pays a lot of dividends, but just being connected to those folks who manage the job board, who manage employer relations, always good. But as far as getting students placed, you got to figure out where you're going to go. And so many years, when I first started in this position, I was doing a lot of reacting. I did a lot of employer calls, and I react to those because they're fantastic leads. And what I've sort of discovered is the less reacting that I do and the more acting, the better off I am. Because sometimes the folks ringing the phone are not necessarily your absolute best partners. Obviously, any call comes in from an employer, you want to return it in 24, 48 at the outside hours. Otherwise, you won't have very many partners left. But as far as this process of new partnership development, you need to look at where the demand is. And so I have a number of things that I use to look at labor market demand. So we're fortunate enough to have accounts on EMSI, that's Economic Modeling Simulations, I believe, MZ we call it, but that's got real-time labor market data. I can look at a glance how many different employers have different jobs on their job board. Wanted Analytics does the same thing. A lot of colleges don't have access to those tools. You can automated searches on Indeed to do much the same thing. But just doing that, that gross level of, okay, where is the demand right now, and looking at where we're seeing it, what do those job postings look like. The other thing that I've discovered is it is much, 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 much easier to take an existing partner and intensify your relationship with them, take it to the next level, than it is to build a new partnership. And usually you get more students, internships, and jobs if you go that avenue anyway. So one of the things that I've done is I try to reach out to program chairs and sit in on as many professional technical advisory board meetings as I can, and just sort of figure out where do you already have connections. And for health IT, looking at where your students are in your healthcare programs or doing their clinicals can often be a good starting point. Those folks who are clinical site coordinators do not really deal with the health IT universe, but for you, it's still good to have an in, that it's much easier rather than cold calling, you know, somebody who's an IT manager at some place, going in, can you get an introduction from somebody who's coordinates clinical site placements, makes it a lot easier. And plus you can also, again, it's an intensification of an existing relationship rather than building another one. So finding those folks who can make those introductions for you, and they're often surprisingly willing to share their contacts as long as you're very clear, I'm not going to burn these people out. This is a one-time ask for an introduction. Respect the other departments and units, contacts, all that stuff, because they will all have horror stories about the time that they lent their contact unit out to, you know, folks at the foundation or folks in unit X, Y, or Z, and they didn't treat their contacts nicely. So, you know, and thanks them profusely for their help. But getting those connections across campus can help you get into organizations where you want to be. Another thing that I sort of looked at is, as far as strategy goes, looking beyond the big names. So I mentioned looking at the areas of largest demand is a good way to kind of start this strategy, but you really, sometimes the largest market can be some of the biggest markets. So in our area, a lot of the big players, HeW Medicine, lots of, you know, there's lots of hospitals in that system, Northwest Hospital, Valley Medicals, big network, big sexy name, University of Washington, HeW's another one. Those are very difficult systems to crack. They're not necessarily feeling the labor market shortage that some other folks are. So a lot of our folks, we've had good relations with some of the smaller names, who are more interested in, and you know, they don't have that name brand recognition, and they're happy to get our calls when we reach out to them. So big clinics, if I'm looking at students to either do a volunteer experience in medical administration or a clinical one, those are often good. People look at hospitals, they kind of neglect big clinics sometimes. And frankly, one of the things that I've discovered, at least in the healthcare field, the further you get away from the big city, the sort of better off you are. So for us, like the hardest places to get into are like the HeW Medicine itself on the UW campus. That's the hardest because it's surrounded by 30,000 UW students. And then HeW is there again. It's density of right in just off of downtown Seattle. And the further you get out and away from the city, which also, by the way, means longer commutes for your students who are going to these places. But, you know, Highline in Burien, Snoqualmie Valley Hospital here, which would be, you know, a 45, 50-minute drive from Seattle. That's one of our best partners. Students get to be a little more generalist. They get to take on a little bit more. They're a little bit hungrier for talent. And so that's been really, really, really useful. So finding those great niches that maybe haven't been occupied yet, a possible strategy there. So that's grand strategy, because one of the things I've discovered is the more time you spend planning on these targetings and stuff, the more effective. It's hard to find time to do the important when the urgent keeps trumping you again and again and again. Student says, I need this letter of recommendation by X time. You know, you have all these things that are extremely urgent that need to happen on tight timelines. Finding ways of getting the important up to the top and selecting those partners and building it over time is kind of key. And I say it, and I'm still not a master of it. So partnership development, a couple of thoughts on this. You know, the first one I have is pretty easy. Make sure you go into the right places, and that's IT directors, managers, IT recruiters. A lot of the larger organizations recruiters will at least get you pointed in the right direction. Those could be good first meetings, but they're not decision makers. And very important lesson here, central HR, it's a trap. If somebody's referring you, hey, would you like to set up a new internship program? Let's talk to central HR. that works maybe 10% of the time. I mean, really trying to stay as much as you can to the decision makers. HR often has to be brought in to vet things, particularly in a medical environment, but having that be as late in the process as possible, where there's sort of an understanding that the college and an organization want to partner. It's good when HR is simply reviewing things that have already been done rather than early in the process. So I always tell this to students who are looking for internships too, right? I mean, if something goes to HR, it's kind of a black hole. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. It's a jail on Monopoly. First meeting, make it on their turf. You go to them as much as you can. Bellevue College has company cars, which makes that kind of nice. Not many BC people even know this, by the way. We could actually get a BC fleet car. So that shows, it certainly makes meeting times much. You could get a meeting in a week or two, not wait forever, and it just shows a certain level of respect and seriousness that you go out to meet them. Know their model. What are their needs? What are they looking for? What are they recruiting for now? And when I say model, to different units in IT, most of them I've seen, it's common that you'll get folks who bring on interns. Maybe they're working with staffing companies for some of this stuff. Maybe they have an existing internship program that looks a lot like something you'd see in the private sector. Maybe the person who's directing the unit comes out of a healthcare background, and so they're more familiar with the clinical placements where it's not run like a traditional internship program. And the primary difference there is on a clinical placement, it's just a rotation. They sign up on X date, the college sends 2 or 3 people, and the college picks, and they handle all of that stuff in the background. And a traditional internship is, you know, organization, you send resumes and organization picks. Either model is fine, by the way, but you should have a sense of what they're doing or if they don't have an existing model. Whenever I do go out to do employer outreach on this sort of first thing, I mean, of course, I bring information about our programs and all the glossy flyers I have, both about the specific programs of interest and about the college in general. But I also try to bring a stack of student resumes as well from my folks who are getting ready for internships. And I realize that a lot of times they're not going to be ready to talk about individual students and individual placements there, but I like to have some samples, some polished ones that just in case to kind of pique their interest of some of our superstars that they might get to meet. And I'd be a surprising number of times if they're taking a meeting with you to explore a partnership, they have needs, and I've had folks keep those resumes and end up getting placements right off of a first meeting. That is the exception rather than the rule, but it's good to have them to pique their interest. I like to do follow-ups. If you can get them to your campus, that's good. That's a great way to actually get them introduced, perhaps to a faculty member, perhaps to a student or two in a program. Get them out here, you kind of bond that, but that's a subsequent step. If students have final project presentations or things like that that you can piggyback off of, that's fantastic, but that's often not always doable depending on the program. But that's good, and then try to take some time to show them around campus, at least a tiny little bit. So now you got the partnerships, tactics, placing. How do you get students out there? So one of the things that I've definitely learned is you have a limited number of truly stellar students every year, and I hoard my superstars. And I try to, in the way that medieval monarchy would like to strengthen their alliances through marriage, and so they marry off kids, not the people that you're already allied with, because that's a waste of a good alliance. You marry them off to people in other countries that you're not allied with. I have the same philosophy, and I try to send my superstars to new partners. And then I have, you know, students, and an existing partner who has worked with your students for a while and seen a couple of your superstars is much, much, much more willing to take a student who's meh down the road and sort of, remember those great ones. But your superstars are your ambassadors, and they build bridges for you. And so you really should move them around the chessboard very, very strategically, because you got a sort of limited number of them. I try to connect with students as early as humanly possible. Too often, students will connect to us pretty late in the process. A lot of our programs don't have some of the career pieces that the healthy workforce schools and programs have them in there. So I'm trying to do more and more getting into the first year professional technical classes and tell them what do they need to do what do you need to do in your first year to get ready for an internship in your second year. And if I don't see them until they're 3 months away from graduation, this sort of just comes across as, there's this thing you should have done that you didn't do, I'm sorry. So it doesn't sit in their world very nicely. But one of the things that I often tell students in any sort of field of IT or the STEM fields more generally is you need a project. You need a showcase piece, and you need to sell that really well on your resume. A lot of different ways to go with that, but that just sort of, it can be a very significant class project outside of class, but you want to document that you are somebody who understands different systems. You can work in teams, but be thinking about those showcase pieces early. And a number of our professional technical programs are pretty good about sending their folks starting their second year to come as a mandatory basis into the Career Center to get some resume development done. But that, again, having a bank of resumes a couple of months before the students are ready to do an internship is super, super, super useful, because students always think, oh, this is going to be fast finding a placement. And it's not. And so having that bank of stuff at your disposal, because you also don't know when somebody's going to call up and say, can you send us, we're interested in talking to and doing some on-campus interviewing or whatever. The other thing that I do a lot of is, this whole teach them to fish approach, and probably the most useful thing that you can do there is get them comfortable on LinkedIn. That I think is best bang for your buck kind of thing. And, a couple of things. In fact, one thing that we're doing, I'm giving a talk this weekend about what we do once a student finds an internship. We make them be on LinkedIn as part of our academic internship program, which I think is fairly innovative. And there's a couple of pieces that I do this is where they struggle, where they could really use some guidance. Summary statements on LinkedIn are kind of tough. It's not like a traditional resume in a lot of ways. So having samples of those that they can look at, I can actually send out some of the materials that I use for this. That's a key thing. That's a core skill for them. Another core skill is recommendations. And I don't mean asking for them. Students are like really comfortable with, hey, can you write a recommendation for me? Maybe too comfortable. And so one of the things that we try to inculcate is the notion that you really should give to get. And so they should get comfortable writing recommendations of folks. Can they write a recommendation for an instructor? Can they, if they worked on a group project with another student, could they write a recommendation of that person? Because it's, my hypothesis here is that students who write recommendations are much more likely to advance than ones who simply receive them. Of course, the best is both, and that's a skill that's an advanced skill that students kind of struggle with. And another one is working with recruiters. So that'd be the sort of third LinkedIn skill I'd have them work on. And this business of, hey, I'm looking for openings in X, Y, or Z. Would you be willing to sit down and have coffee? And recruiters tend to be very receptive to this, especially among students who are getting close to graduation. And, if a student gets themselves in the right groups, that becomes very easy to reach out to recruiters. I do not necessarily find the LinkedIn groups to be super, super valuable in and of themselves. There's sometimes some good job postings there. But they're almost, and then, you know, students don't really need to actively participate in these two. They frankly can lurk and be just fine. But if they're in a group, you don't necessarily need to have somebody in your network to reach out to them. So if a student's just starting on LinkedIn, they're going to have, like, you know, 12 contacts, you know, some faculty members and colleagues at the college. So how are they ever going to reach out to recruiters who aren't in their first or second level network of contacts? Well, join groups. A lot of recruiters have their settings set so that you can just reach out to them if you're in the same group as them. Very useful, very powerful tool. Students inevitably get discouraged, though, when reaching out to recruiters, like, oh, I sent this out to, you know, a dozen recruiters and nobody got back to me. That's common, and so one of the things you need to keep the power of follow-up. It should never, ever, ever be underestimated. And in fact, what I tell students is if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or via an email or something like that, you put it on your calendar to follow up 7 days later with that individual. And my favorite career blogger here in the Puget Sound region, Matt Youngquist, just recently ran a post on this. And one of the things, he did a study of clients that he was working with, reaching out to recruiters. And the first time they reached out to recruiters, and he would have each person reach out to potentially 30 or 40 different recruiters. They would get a response rate of single digits, 10% at the best, of people would respond to their, hey, could you have time to have a cup of coffee kind of thing. And then, you know, he had everybody follow up. And of the people who declined the first time, when you followed up with that individual a week later, something like 40 to 50% of them responded to the call in a positive way. And that's a really important thing for students to wrap their heads around. It's frequently not the first time you ask, but the second time you ask that you're going to get a response. And that's just natural. People are busy, and recruiters are extremely busy right now. So time one, you're just fighting against their priorities. And the thing about follow-up is, first of all, you show yourself to be professional, which is, you know, a major plus. But the other thing, too, is you activate that guilt response, which is good. Oh, I really meant to get back to this person, but I just didn't have time. So just, you know, having students realize that this is going to be a two-step process. Don't expect that people are going to get back to you the first time that they reach out to you. Yeah, reaching out 3 and 4 times, though, not good. Make them stop. Just students can burn bridges pretty easily there, right? So 2 is a good time to reach out. More than that, you have potentially students burning some bridges. So anyway, one of the things that I like to do, too, is once you get folks into internships, this idea of turning placements into pipelines, is sending folks your superstars really kind of helps with this. But following up with those internship supervisors, being profuse with your thanks. If there's an event out there at their organization that you can attend, try to make it, even though, you know, you're swamped and busy as well. But you know, for students, you know, one of the things I also tell them is that first internship placement is often the gateway to the second. So I actually have Dima's brought up a LinkedIn profile of one of our former internship students here who used his Costco internship as a stepping stone into his Boeing internship here. And, you know, so he's got a pretty strong LinkedIn profile, even though he's only got 42 connections and 1 recommendation from me. You might see clipped off at the bottom of that screen. And also, Dima, you can't use a selfie as your LinkedIn profile photo there. Just note to self. But this business of capturing the great things that they did at their internship and having those students, you thank the supervisor. Student is recommending coworkers who've been really particularly useful. All of these things, using those your superstars wisely out of the box for new partners, those are things that can help turn placements into pipelines, and that makes this process much easier because, like I said, again, much easier to intensify an existing partnership than to go out and build a new one in terms of return on investment. So those are some of the main things that I had just thinking about some of these events. So, but you know, it's going to vary from college to college, institution to institution. What works here isn't going to necessarily work there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there so that you don't see how many emails I have unanswered. And I'm going to scroll back to and see if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michael. This is fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for Michael?
This is Tricia at Clark College.
Hey, Tricia.
Hi. I was just curious, how do you kind of navigate the environment between, you know, faculty sometimes or oftentimes have partnerships with employers as well, and then there's your role, and then there's the advisory boards, you know, with employers on them as well. How do you navigate all those different pieces? Because what I've seen here at Clark is sometimes we have people communicating all over the place, you know, with employers, and sometimes that's led into some areas of challenge. So I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
It's a problem, and the bigger your institution, the bigger the problem's going to get. I mean, Clark is fairly comparable in size to Bellevue, and we run into it a lot. When I was at the University of Washington before I came here, we ran into it all the time, and from an employer perspective, it can be a little bit annoying because you can say, like, weren't you guys just here last week? They say,
right.
Like, oh, no, that wasn't health IT, that was regular IT. There's no great solution to this having the left hand knowing what the right hand is doing kind of problem. So a couple of things that all that said is that it's not don't think that it's a wholly soluble problem. What you're going to be able to do is reduce this issue rather than get rid of it entirely. A couple of things that are useful is, you know, we do have a business relations team here at the college, which brings folks from different units together to share what they're doing. That's the high level kind of stuff. I don't know how much it helps individual programs. But so just having a sense of if you find yourself stepping on the toes of a particular unit, whether it be related or what faculty member, that you know that you need to do your homework and find out where they are. So a couple of things that I do is just go to those faculty members, particularly the program chairs, some of the or faculty who do multiple placements. Maybe their background is in industry, so they've got a ton of contacts there. Just come to them, talk to them, talk about what they're doing, and be willing to share some of your own contacts with them, by the way, because don't think that they're necessarily going to share contact information for their folks with you, but what you might be able to say is, hey, do you have any connections at location X, Y, or Z? And you might be able to get that information.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia. Are there any other questions for Michael? Well, I have one. Michael, I'm wondering, do you encourage students to do informational interviews with employers? And if so, do you play a role in setting those up?
Informational interviews? We do some. To be honest, I would do that with somebody where we already have a really good partnership, but it's a lot of work. It's a great connection for a student, and sometimes, you know, unless I think the student is, if I'm worried that the student's going to not represent the college very well, I will hold off on giving them contact information. I mean, I'm a big advocate of informational interviewing, but as far as us facilitating the process, it's time intensive and the ROI is not fantastic. So one of the things we're thinking about is doing a structured job shadowing network kind of program, which might again, it would be larger employers willing to give people a tour and maybe do an informational interview as part of that, which might make it a little bit more manageable. But on an ad hoc, bird-by-bird basis, we do it from time to time, and it's a powerful thing for students, but there are a number of downsides that I see to informational interviews. So I do it, but I limit it, because the ROI just doesn't look great.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Great question.
Any other questions?
My director asks me like that very same thing sometimes. What are we doing regarding informational interviews? Well, not as much. Take a lot of time.
Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Is there something you wanted to say?
I'll ask.
Oh, okay.
Cool. All right, but I can see that my Wi-Fi is getting cranky on me here too, so I'm breaking up a little bit. So, all right, thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, I think we had one more question. Jen, did you have something?
Yes, this is kind of related to your presentation coming up. I was just curious about some of the tips you had for students based on the summary on their LinkedIn profile.
Short, bulleted. Anything over 50 words should probably be bulleted. I mean, this is their opportunity to differentiate themselves from other students in the program. What's the special sort of value that they bring? So if they have something from their background that they've worked in healthcare in some other sort of capacity before, they definitely want to get that out there. Exceptional customer service skills. I mean, so any of those quick transferable things, but usually what I'm looking for is like 2 or 3 key takeaways things that they excel in, whether that be technical skills that they have that they feel particularly proud of, projects, the history of demonstrated success in projects, transferable skills, healthcare-related experience, any of those kinds of things can be fantastic ways of doing it. Students often go overboard, so like, a couple of paragraphs long, the system will let you take it. I don't necessarily love that. The shorter is definitely more impactful there. And I think I am going to try and type this up and send this out. But it's hard, and I'm not even really happy with my LinkedIn summary. It's a challenging, the hardest piece, I think, of the profile.
Good to know.
That would be great if you could send us something. And you can just send that to me, and I'll get it out to everyone.
Okay, I'll do that. I have a question for you guys, too. So, I've worked with a number of health IT students before, and one of the things that we sort of keep running up against is this: so many employers are too busy fighting alligators to drain the swamps, and so we inevitably have some really qualified students looking for internships, and I get hiring managers saying things like again and again, like, well, do they have Epic or Cerner experience? And I'm like, well, no, because do you realize how expensive that software is? Presumably this is going to require some on-the-job training, and they balk because the notion of having any time to train anybody to do anything is an immediate obstacle for them, despite the fact that their needs are so vast. Are you guys having traction with using like emulator-based systems rather than Epic and Cerner-based systems, getting a little bit more buy-in from employers? So because anything you got from me on this one could be really useful.
Okay, well, I know that we're implementing some simulations, some EMR simulations into the curriculum so that people get hands-on training in their classes. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on this.
Yeah, it's for OpenEMR and Vista. It's not Cerner.
Yeah, no. So, but I mean, what do you? So, I mean, I get employers who immediately balk if it's not Cerner or Epic.
Right.
What do you guys say to get past that pain point?
Well,
I've not had any experience in that. I just know that they won't let us use that stuff. It's too expensive.
So that definitely has been a challenge, but I've been noticing a lot more jobs lately where they're not requiring EPIC or Cerner. And I think a lot of that is because as people are implementing EMRs, the smaller healthcare clinics or the public health, they're not able to use EPIC or Cerner either.
Oh,
so
okay.
They seem to be more open to people who don't have that training.
Sure, that's good.
So that's just what I've noticed. But I'd be happy to talk with you later about it as well. Maybe we can brainstorm.
Yeah, this is one where I think there is no magic bullet, but if you guys had something,
right.
I just want to make sure. That's all right. Well, thanks a ton. Any more questions before I head off into the sun here?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. So,
Thank
all right.
you.
Have a good afternoon, folks. Take care.
Okay. See, I'm going to try to switch back to the agenda here. If I can figure out how to give myself control. There we go. Okay, so great discussion. I just wanted to move on to our challenges and best practices. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share with the group? Either a challenge or a best practice? Feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up too.
This is Tricia at Clark College.
Hi, Tricia.
Hi. I just thought I'd throw in, for us down here, one thing that I'm really trying to focus on is we just had a recent cohort of nursing students graduate, which is exciting, but they still have to pass the NCLEX exam. So for them, you know, finding employment and doing the job search and putting the effort into that hasn't been entirely top of mind because they were just focused on academics, and now it's preparing for the NCLEX. So, but I'm trying to put intentional effort around marketing the career support and job search services to them, even though they are done with the program, and to start this process alongside their, you know, preparation to take the NCLEX exam, and just informing them and reminding them of the long time that it can take to acquire employment, and that they need to be starting now if they haven't done even anything already. I mean, we already try to infuse this kind of thing into the curriculum in their last quarter, but it's just reemphasizing that they need to be doing actions along the way, even though they're not fully certified in nursing or pharmacy tech yet. So that's just one thing that I'm trying to focus on with the most recent cohorts.
Great. Have you had any response to that yet?
Yeah, I've had people set up meetings with me individually to talk about resume, cover letter, job search assistance. And yeah, they've taken me up on that. They've been really appreciative of it.
Excellent. Thanks, Tricia.
We've had a similar experience here recently. The student navigator and I have been going into classrooms more often and reminding students of the career services, especially the cohorts that are near graduation, the ones that only have a quarter left, especially really, really are interested in the services, but we've had, ever since we started the classroom visits, like reminding people more of the services, we've had more people contact us lately wanting assistance with the cover letter, resumes, and LinkedIn profiles.
Great. Thanks, Jen. See, who else do we have online? Chantal, we haven't heard from you in a long time. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
Hi. I think one of the practices that I would want to share is connecting with the students, especially the graduating cohorts as well. Similar to what others are saying, is just to acknowledge that we're here to help and to continue with their job searches and mock interviews and so on. Just last week we had mock interviews with our CNT group, and they had great practicing skills, and they loved that opportunity to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you. How about Erica or Mary?
This is Mary. I hate to beat a dead horse, but the intake forms have still been an issue, especially when they're strictly online students only, and there's absolutely no response with them whatsoever. We have like 43 of them, but I'm not giving up on them.
I know that's been a challenge for a lot of people. Has anyone come up with any solutions to that? I know a lot, we've talked about this a lot, and it sounds like people have tried various things, including tracking people down outside of their classrooms and requiring the intake form in order to sign up for classes.
Yeah, so let me ask a question on that. So we had our instructors, for 10 points, they could fill out their intake form, and they would get the 10 points. And that after 10 days or something, they would lose those points. Well, they filled out the intake form, electronic, because it's a Word document, and sent it to the instructor, because they were all online students, and they weren't signed. And so my understanding is we can't use them unless they actually physically sign the page where that requires their signature. My question is, and maybe this is something that it's a discussion with the project managers, is there a way we could have them sign electronically and still not, because that's going to be a big issue. I think for me it's been a big issue. I mean, if they fill it out online, they send it as an attachment, here's my intake form, and we print that email along with the intake form, I would think that would suffice if we have that all in the record.
Okay. So Esther's writing me a note. So I'll share what Esther had to say is to scan the signature and send it by phone.
So they sign it, they fill out their intake form, they sign it, and then they can scan it to you.
A lot of them don't have scanners, though. A lot of them don't even have printers.
Do they have smartphones?
I don't know, because they're not, I don't have contact with them.
So we just make phone calls. We call them until they answer the phone, and if they can take a picture or they can get an app, they can scan it to you. Yep, we've gotten you know, pictures from their phone, and then most people though can get a app from scanning, or they can get to the library and scan it. So that's how we've overcome that problem.
Yeah, well, see, with our online students for the health information management, they're all over. If they're strictly online, we have them all over the state.
Well, we have them. We have them all over the United States. So, I mean,
but you get them all in that way. I mean, what if they? I mean, like I said, they just aren't responding, even with phone. I mean, it's like they know who's calling, and so they don't answer the phone. Oh, that's an SCC number. We're not going to answer that one.
Yeah. Being able to scan by their phone or take a picture and send it has been very effective. Also, I think our courses require entry codes. So withholding an entry code until they get it back to us has been effective.
What do you mean an entry code?
So they can't sign up for the class unless they get a special code from us.
Oh. Blackmail, huh?
It's incentive, it's motivation.
Yeah, that's what it is, Esther.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Helpful.
I'm also wondering, too, if, along those lines of scanning with the phone or scanning electronically, that maybe if you could put, together, a really simple, 3 or 4 or 5-step process for them so that they just have it, these are the 5 things you need to do in order to do this. Hopefully it's not that many, but you know what I'm saying? So it's just really clear and easy for them.
Yeah, because one thing I'm finding is that a lot of these people don't have computer skills. I mean, the IT guys do in software and networking, but the health information people, no. They don't.
Really?
No. Mm-mm.
That's a little...
They have no experience in Microsoft Office whatsoever, and it's not part of their program.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
interesting, huh?
We could brainstorm a little more offline if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, sure. No worries.
Okay, it looks like Michelle typed something in the chat box, too. Okay, so Michelle shared that she's been busy with mock interviews with the medical assisting students. She says, I've drafted a mock interview feedback form to give to students where I write in strengths, areas of improvement, and action steps to take for practice. And then she has a question, does anyone else have a feedback form that they give students after they complete a mock interview? Does anyone have a response for Michelle? I think it's a great idea. So who haven't we heard from yet? How about Patricia Lang? Do you have anything to share? Okay, how about Erica at Nova? So Erica just shared again, we're doing phone interview practices. Great. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to share? How about Brandy? Oh, wait, it looks like I missed quite a few chats here. Let me go back for a second. Okay, so Brandy did chime in on the intake forms and said that they made the form an assignment for extra credit, and that you can use a Scanner Pro app, which converts to PDF. Thanks for that, Brandy. Okay, so did someone else just come on, call in 5? Must be Brandy. Okay, so Brandy also typed in that we have teamed up with Workforce Central to have them do mock interviews and filmed. Great. And with feedback. Excellent. She said we also did a headshot day for photos for LinkedIn, professional looking photos for LinkedIn. That's a great idea. And Pat typed in, has anyone found a need for a conflict resolution workshop? If so, what have you done around this? Our instructors are requesting that this be part of our HDP program. That's interesting. So has anyone else run into that? Has anyone else had a need for a conflict resolution workshop? Doesn't sound like it. That's something we could talk about offline later too, Pat. And Jennifer said that Bellevue College campus offers a workshop on that topic every now and then. And Brandy said that it's included in their course outcomes. And Tricia, we offer one every quarter to all students at Clark as part of the Student Success Workshop. So it sounds like maybe getting in touch with your career services office or student services to see if they offer a workshop might be a good idea. Okay, great discussion, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next topic, which is talking about our upcoming meetings and facilitators. And I'd really like to encourage you all to step up in a leadership position and facilitate one of our meetings. And if you have any ideas for topics, we'd love to hear those too. So we have our upcoming meetings are April 22nd for the new quarter, and May 27th and June 24th. So does anyone have any ideas or suggestions for upcoming meetings, or are you willing to facilitate a discussion chosen by someone else? Well, I can offer some suggestions. Let's see. I can offer some suggestions. One is that I know I talked with one of the navigators recently about presentations, and I know a lot of you are doing workshops and presentations and webinars for your students. And I'm just wondering if that might be a good topic for us to talk about and maybe do a little show and tell with different types of presentations. Does that sound of interest to anyone?
I think that's a great idea, Pam.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Okay, and Tricia said yes as well. Okay, well then I would like to put that down for our April topic. And I'll talk offline then with some of you who said you were interested and get some more information about that. And then another topic I could suggest is the internships, which I received a lot of new information about internships, which I could share with you guys. If that's of interest, or if anyone else would like to facilitate a meeting on internships, that would be great too. So first of all, is the topic of internships of interest to you as a meeting topic, and is anyone interested in facilitating that? Okay, so we had one yes for internships. Okay, so here's your chance to chime in, people. So I'm going to I don't hear differently, I'm going to go ahead and put internships down for May. So Brandy asked what different info on internships. Really, it's just some updated information on kind of the latest legal status of unpaid and paid internships, and then also, you know, how employers are structuring internships and suggestions for structuring internships. Yeah, so it would be more about the internships themselves and less about what Michael talked about today in terms of how to connect with employers to get internships. So it'd be more kind of the do's and don'ts or ins and outs of internships. And then we have another suggestion for conflict resolution tips. Okay, well, that sounds great. So just wanted to remind you guys that it's come around awfully fast, but it's ready for the new quarter and your new Navigator quarterly goals and progress reports. I'd like to have by April 8th. If you can't get them to me by April 8th, please just send me an email and let me know when you can get them to me. I know it's a busy time, and then I'll be scheduling follow-up phone calls with all of you after that as well. And then one more thing I wanted to say to piggyback on Michael Reese's presentation was he mentioned having the resumes on hand when you're talking to employers about internships. And I'm actually talking to several employers about internships right now, mostly in Pierce and King County. So if you have any students right now who are looking for internships in those areas and you have resumes, please send them to me because I will definitely pass those along and let you know about those opportunities if you do have students looking for internships. So, okay, that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say before we close the meeting? Okay, well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
You're welcome.